How's everybody doing? My name's Ryan Beard. I'm the head football coach at Missouri State.
I'm Tamara Rody. I'm a grad student and I'm on the track and field team.
I'm Edna Dar. I'm a grad student also on the cross country and track team.
Hi, my name is Aja Jones and I currently serve as a Director of Student Athlete Development and Community Relations.
My name is Calandra Henry and I am also on the track and field team.
I'm Caitlin Christian. I'm the academic counselor for track and field.
Reggie Johnson, assistant football coach.
Well, thank you all so much for being here. We really just wanted to, in honor of Black History Month, wanted to have some honest conversations about Black History Month and what that means when it comes to our student athletes and our coaches and our staff. So just kind of wanted to hear people's thoughts about, why we celebrate Black History Month or how you celebrate Black History Month. Does anyone have any general thoughts about kind of what it means to them and why we need to celebrate? Let's not all jump at once.
I guess I'll go first.
Yeah.
To me, Black History Month means like a time to celebrate Black excellence and really just look at those who came before us and the contributions they made and the achievements they made and like how it's like helped everybody. Mm-hmm. And for me, I celebrate it through like just really like getting into like the Black culture and like I try to like go back into history and like review some of the things like I don't already know.
Yeah.
And I like really just like I like to read, so I try to like find like Black authors that I can like read like a new book or like another small Black owned business that I can like purchase from and stuff.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think it's just like super important to honor and like recognize the struggles that our Black ancestors have faced, but it's equally as important to like recognize their achievements as well, just because that's how we move forward and that's how we like gain inspiration from them. So that's something that I also do, is just like whether it's looking at a new Black athlete that's up and coming or like she was saying, supporting Black local businesses or just finding a new author that you can kind of like gain inspiration from.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's kind of interesting because a lot of people, and I would argue too, that Black history is American history, but it doesn't seem like that's always the case. I was having a conversation the other day, and I think it was with you. I asked, kind of generally like when you became aware of Black history and certain things that happened, and you had mentioned it was like, what, college that you learned about some of the things? Right? Do you remember having that conversation? Like you just didn't learn it, right? You just didn't learn about it. Yeah. So, I mean, just thinking about that, like when did you really start learning about historical Black events? Did anybody have like thoughts about that?
I think for me it was in college. That was like my first like time really being around a lot of other like Black students, Black student athletes, because I grew up like going to a predominantly white like school. My hometown was white. Like the only Black people were my family members. So like the only time that we like learned about Black History Month was obviously like in school, but like my parents raised me to like understand like how not everything was like just provided for me, how like there was achievements throughout life and stuff like that. So I think like growing up and being more like exposed to people that were like me in college really opened my eyes to different things.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing to me about it is representation's important. And, there's a simply used term, knowledge is power. Yeah. I think that's important. What you don't know, what you don't know. And the exposure that Black History Month gives young and old Black people and white people the opportunity to learn about each other and understand where Coach Johnson comes from on my staff, where he can understand, a little bit more about me. It can open conversations in regards to important aspects of history as well as current topics. Yeah. And the more you know about each other and the more that you show it's important to you, the more that you can get out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's important for young people, us old folk as well, to understand that we all have value.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's a big component of Black History Month is that, hey, for a lot of young African American youth or people of color, please understand that you have value. There are people before you that that you can draw from.
Right.
That I am important. I can excel. I can do great things, and I'm not limited or restricted in the paths that I can take, the professions that I can go in. So I think that's a huge component of Black History Month, is understanding that you have value.
Yeah.
And you can add to your community. So I think that's been a big part of it for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's big. Kate, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think just like learning about the person as an individual, regardless white or black, is important. I know I work with a lot of students overall that are different from me, and just learning where people come from and learning their background is important. I take the month of February just to learn about other things. I did not grow up learning about Black history, and I think as an adult, I think it's important that I'm learning more, engaging more with students and people that are different from me, to learn those things. So I think it's important for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think people have like mixed thoughts about it too, which I wanted to these are real conversations, and so limiting it to 1 month, not ideal, because we want to celebrate folks, throughout the year, all the time. But it is really interesting because we've already heard there's a lot of people who didn't learn about Black history, or the history that we have learned has been like around trauma and all of these struggles. And you had mentioned it's important to recognize those, to see kind of where we are at now, despite going through those. But it's also about the excellence and the things that the Black community has contributed, that we don't talk enough about. And it's beyond just, when you think about Black history, you see the Martin Luther King Jr. quotes, and Rosa Parks didn't move out of her seat. And those people, history has been changed because of that. But we also have to be mindful that, Black joy and Black excellence is really another part of that I think we don't focus on enough, right? Like, what are we doing to empower our student athletes or our students of color, and really celebrating them? So I'm just thinking, and as coaches or administrators and staff, what are some ways that we can, empower our student athletes of color, to be better, and to make sure that they do recognize that they're not limited? So what are some things that you all do, or would like to do to kind of really help kind of nail that message down to our students? I know it's a tough question.
That's a great,
on the spot.
Like Coach Johnson said, the value of the student, and seeing you are more than your color, you are more than your sport, you are an individual who is here, yes, for your sport and yes, for the school, but empowering you as an individual, that's big for me. Making sure you know your worth, your value, that we support you regardless of your, again, sport and things like that. So I think just, like I keep saying, getting to the core of that person, and that individual is big.
Yeah.
I think in terms of how do you stress it and get it out there, I think it's important for engagement, for community service, which we always stress, right, from our end. So
absolutely.
Whether you're active in your church or your local fraternity or social club, there are a lot of ways to get that done. So we, from our end as coaches, we have to continually push guys to get out of their comfort zone, because you tend to want to stay with your sport. Since we're all athlete, well, you guys, you tend to want to stay with your track and field peers.
Yeah.
Hey, it's okay to travel outside of that circle and engage with other folk. Engage in your local, for the elementary schools or high schools. They have programs that invite you in and encourage you to come in. So I'd say take advantage of all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So we have to continue to do that from our end.
Yeah.
And get our guys out.
Okay, love that.
Yeah, and I agree with everything everyone said, but the main thing I think we should focus on, it doesn't have to be some huge broadcast. It can start as simple as 7 people in, talking about some differences, talking about what's important to them. And here at Missouri State, we do a great job, Aja, with our leadership institutes in regards to getting people of color in roles that create a sense of leadership and the representation that's required to bring on change and bring on progress. I think the more we can continue to do those type things, and again, I'm big on open, genuine conversation, and the more of these round table types deals you can have, because again, when I walked in the room, none of you all knew who I was, right? You didn't know who Coach Johnson was, and now you know 2 leadership figures on campus that if something was up, you could come to us and say, hey, Coach Beardman, I'm having a problem. My office is always open, his office is always open, and we've breached a gap just in 5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Conversations are powerful, right? I love that. I love that. So I'm thinking about, we're thinking about historical figures. I mentioned a couple. So when you think of Black History Month, you think of folks who have contributed from the Black and Brown communities. Who comes to mind as like a historic figure or someone that you look up to? I know this is probably one of the toughest conversations. Can be athlete, whatever. Kind of y'all's frame of reference. Who comes to mind when you think of Black History Month figures?
I guess I'll go first.
Okay,
The first one that comes to my mind is Malcolm X.
Okay.
And the reason why is because, like, throughout history, like in high school, I had an African American history teacher who was also my track coach. So she made sure like we was very like deeply rooted into there. And I remember like we had like a whole PowerPoint over like the ideas of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. And like although they had kind of like opposing views and like different ideas of how they approached that, I agreed with both, but like Malcolm X like really stood out to me. And I'm talking about like the by any means necessary part, but like I just really like kind of got into what he was saying. And I remember for an award show that we had at school, we had to pick a quote. And I picked a quote from Malcolm X, and I believe it was, "Tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today."
Okay.
And that's just something I always like lived by.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid motto, I'd say.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anybody else?
I'd say for me, I've kind of find it hard to like personally relate to like different historical figures, but growing up in running a sport where it was very dominated by white people in my country, in Canada and in the USA. So for me, my family's Ethiopian, and distance is just really dominated by a lot of the Ethiopian women. So I've really looked up to them in my sport. And I would say more recently, I think Mo is an up-and-coming, like, huge runner. She's around our age, so I've really, really looked up to her as well. Just for me, like, being at conference meets and not seeing any girls that look like me in a final is a little discouraging not to have representation in your conference. So seeing her being a United States athlete and dominating as a Black woman has been very, very great to see.
Yeah, that's inspiring, right? Absolutely. Anyone else? Don't put anybody on the spot. If not, that's totally fine too.
Okay, there's
so
a
many.
host. There are hosts. I mean, for me, again, across the spectrum, you can go from Thurgood Marshall to Paul Robeson to, I mean, there are thousands of people that you've read about or you may have heard about that have done tons of things to progress. Us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are a lot. So
There are.
But there are. So.
Yeah. Obviously they don't look like me, but Black coaches in the NFL, Tony Dungy, Mike Tomlin,
Right.
all people I draw from in regards to just not so much schematics of how they treat people, how they treat their staff, how, Mike Tomlin was quoted saying, if you're in a room full of people and you sit on a good idea, that's a shame on you. That's white, Black, person of color, white.
Yeah.
I have you on the staff. Bring up your ideas and make it important, and know that you're, like you were saying, know you're valued in the community culture. So, again, those are two guys that come to my mind, and Tony Dungy's a man of faith. That's extremely important to me, and he's vocal about it. He gets knocked down sometimes about it, but he stands on who he is. And sometimes, it takes getting knocked down once or twice to really find out who you are.
I'd also add somebody else that I really admire is Serena Williams, because she has really shown how it is okay to be passionate in your sport as a black woman and not seem like a crazy black woman playing a sport. So that's someone that I've really, really looked up to as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a great one.
Yeah, she always got the, like, I feel like the angry black woman, like, stereotype and all of that. But you're absolutely right. She's just passionate. So that's a good point. Anybody else on kind of a historic figure or somebody they look up to? My next question then is, did everybody know that there is a theme for Black History Month every year?
No.
Okay, well, surprise! Education lesson today. So this year's theme
Is this national or Missouri State?
National.
Okay, it's a national
Yes.
theme.
So this year's theme is Black Resistance, which I'm sure that probably gets some negative connotation, and resistance looks different, I feel like, in a variety of ways. So what does Black resistance mean to you all, if you had answers to that? Because I think I personally have an answer, and I would, I guess, just kind of entertain whether or not. So I mentioned, like, trauma, and that's the thing when we think of the Black community, a lot of times people immediately go to violence and trauma and struggles. But I think Black joy, right, and laughter and things is its own form of resistance, just because there's just this connotation that there's just so many negative aspects of Black history, that even just being joyous and really being passionate about things outside of, just your sport, right? Kate, you mentioned getting to know people. We've got so many student athletes and coaches and staff who are into a variety of different things that's not just stereotypical and things. And so seeing the joy and the laughter and all of that, I think is a form of resistance. But does anybody else have any thought on kind of what Black resistance means or what that looks like in action?
It's a good one. I think
It is a good one.
it's a good one. I think, I guess, immediately my mind, my thoughts went to young athletes, since I deal with Black men, is resist the lure of, I'm gonna make it as a professional athlete.
Yes.
Right? You have to, our guys are gonna leave here with a meaningful degree that they can go out and compete with anyone across the spectrum, whatever their chosen field is. So to me, it went to let's resist the dumb jock, or that I'm here to be a professional athlete. I mean, that is immediately where my thoughts went with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think
That's great.
yeah,
That's really good. Yeah. Anybody else have thoughts?
it's a good one.
I know, it's just a thought. Well, maybe just challenge people to be thinking
it's
about
good.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's even as simple as, I talked to a young man in my office the other day, and he's going to be the first graduate from his family. You're breaking generational issues and just getting yourself a degree and making yourself a hireable employee. And we are fortunate enough, and thank God every day, that we get to teach men how to be good fathers, good friends, good mentors to the young people in our community, and make a better lives for themselves.
Yeah. How do you resist? Edna, how do you resist?
I guess I'm just not really fully understanding what Black resistance is, but kind of backpacking off of what they were saying. I know it's not my job to break stereotypes of what a Black woman should be, but I think for me it's just proving my potential and what I think a lot of times Black women and Black men have to go above and beyond to reach the same standard as other folk. So I think for me it's just proving something to myself and knowing that I made it there beyond my skin color and beyond other struggles.
Yeah, I think you nailed Black resistance right on the head there. So I appreciate your honesty and vulnerability there.
Incredible answer. That was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
That actually got me thinking. I don't really know if this is what Black resistance is, but to me, it means just standing firm in what I believe, and me as a Black woman, just doing me at the end of the day and not letting anything deteriorate me, like trying to fit into a box and like trying to avoid certain stereotypes of what it is to be a black woman, just like resisting all of that negativity and just like living my truth and like what I am.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I said, what does it mean to you all? Like, you all just defined it in your own way, and I think that's part of what the themes are, is you get to kind of decide what that looks like. But absolutely, you live in your truth.
I think for me, it's kind of like what everybody has said, is like kind of just breaking stereotypes, because like I said earlier, I was raised like in a predominantly white like area, and so I didn't see many people like me like go to college or like even really play sports or anything like that. And so like in high school, I was one of the few like African American students that left with like a scholarship to run or like play any sport. I'm a first generation like college graduate and things like that. So I think like for me, it's like not letting people put me like in a box and say like, oh, you're gonna be like this person in your community or like all that stuff. And so I think it's just like kind of what she said, like just standing firm in who you are, and like even like setting more like goals and expectation for yourself, because like when I was probably in 5th grade, I ran track probably for fun or something like that, and I didn't think it would like bring me to be like a grad student like speaking up and like telling people like, no, you can do this. So I think it's just like stepping out and not being put in the box.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts on that? Raise your hand if you're uncomfortable. Anyone?
No, I think it's going good.
I don't know. We didn't have any expectations, but I think it's going great. Were you going to add something, Kate?
Well, I was just going to say, like, resisting going with the flow, or like going with the white community, or going with what everybody outside of your community expects from you, and like resisting the urge to just conform with the community, and like branching out and doing the things that you were born to do, and again, just like not just branching out and doing your thing and not resisting to what society thinks you should do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and telling that message to our students too, right? For those who work with student athletes, is like, well, shoot, and even our staff too, is just making sure that like you get to decide what you want to be and what you want to do. And it may be a little more difficult for some, just because of, you know, the history of systems and things, but how can we help you get there too, right? So I think it's kind of leaning on people that you have in your circle, and I think that's kind of our role as administrators and staff and coaches, is just making sure that like, okay, think differently. Like what is our plan A, B, and C, right? So we're not just gonna go out and play professionally, that's great, but also it's gonna end at some point. So like what else, who else are you? What does that look like? So I think supporting folks that way too, so. All right, well, that was all of my questions. So does anybody have any like last minute things that you would like to say, or that you wish folks knew, or anything like that? Any kind of final thoughts? I wanted to give people their platform.
Yeah, it's always a good thing to just educate yourself throughout the whole year. Like February is just a time where we really highlight Black history, but I think for Black people, like, it's our lived experience every single day, and I know personally I think about being Black every single day, but that's not the case for everyone. So I think just taking steps and educating yourself and just understanding the people around you a little bit more is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else?
Well said, Edna.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Lunch. Oh, it's not lunchtime yet. Sorry about that.
No, it's getting there. It's getting there. I think you're absolutely right. And just remembering that Black history is American history. And I think when we begin to treat it as such, we won't necessarily need a month specifically to celebrate. We'll celebrate all the time. I think that's probably ultimately the goal, is that it is so ingrained just in history of America that we won't need to, you know, kind of pigeonhole and celebrate it in just 1 month. So I think that's kind of the goal, but I appreciate the honest conversations. This was fun, and hopefully we can have more, and I hope you all take this on and go share it with the folks in your circle too. So
For sure.
happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month.